I'm Jamie.
And I'm Brianna.
And this is the Early Morning Show. Today we'll be talking about a rather informative topic, one that not many really think about today. Our last few segments have been over ordinary hardships that the average person faced in this century. But right now we're taking it back a few hundred years to about 1607. The early years of Jamestown, the first colony in the New World, was filled with difficulties.
Whoa, wait up. What difficulties?
Well, they had a hard few years.
Please, their life was easy. They had new land and they could finally build a life of their own.
No, there were many things that contributed to their suffering.
Well, then enlighten me.
For starters, none of the colonists were prepared for the harsh conditions ahead.
Okay, go on.
Okay, so the men had no idea how to farm on the new land, therefore they could not provide the food needed for the winter months.
Oh, so what happened?
Well, many people died from starvation, and most of the survivors were perilled by disease because their bodies were already incredibly weak from low food intake.
Sounds horrible.
Oh, it was.
Our last poppy seed muffin. I'm gonna starve!
Okay, so what was next?
Well, bugs were a rising problem.
Bugs?
You see, mosquitoes were very common in the colony, but the downside was most of them were infected with malaria.
Oh, I heard that's very bad.
Yes, so when the mosquitoes bit some of the colonists, the disease quickly spread. With little to no food already, and a low supply of moderately effective medicines, death by malaria was common.
So that was another reason the colonists had a rough time starting out.
Yes.
Okay, but how do we know all the information hundreds of years later? I mean, we weren't there and we can't talk to anyone that was there because they're dead.
Well, there are journals and things that the actual colonists wrote in their everyday lives. Years later, when these diaries were recovered, people were able to figure out what went down at the colony.
Oh, I think I've heard of that.
For instance, to prove my point about diseases, here's a couple of phrases from a journal that John Smith, the leader of the Jamestown colony, wrote in. Such famine and sickness that the living were scarce able to bury the dead.
So when he says that it means a lot of colonists died, but there was still so much disease that people were extremely weak even when they were alive?
Precisely! Here's a clip.
A mosquito!
That's so sad. But it couldn't have been just starvation and disease that made life difficult, could it?
Well, no. There is one more thing.
Okay, let me guess. I have heard of this problem.
Indian attacks.
Wow, thanks.
Anyways, besides the fact that the colonists were low on food and diseases were spreading, Indians were also prowling around the area with uneasy feelings. Their territory had been invaded, and they did everything they could to keep the colony from succeeding. In 1609 to around 1610, the colony went through a starving time. Sure, they were low on supplies, but they had no way of hunting because the Indians had besieged their fort.
So they had no way of getting food, and many died during this time?
Exactly. The Powhatan Indians were the cause of this. In John Smith's journal, he explains, Indians the day before it assaulted the fort and surprised it, and he also states that they were assaulted with certain Indians, which charged them within pistol shot.
Pistol shot. When did that happen?
Well, the second quote was made by John Smith on the day that they landed at Jamestown.
So the Indians hated them from the start.
It's nice
Yes.
fruit!
Oops, we're almost out of time.
That we are.
To conclude, the colonists were not prepared for the harsh conditions that met them at Jamestown upon arrival.
Well said.
Well, I'm Brianna.
And I'm Jamie.
And this has been the Early Morning
Did
Show. Did you know that colonists only bathe 2 times a year?
And also
I did not know that.